Hi, and welcome to this episode of The Drifting Pen, a podcast for voice guided Zentangle classes. For this class, you'll need a pencil, a pen. I'm using a Sakura Micron 01 black pen, a piece of paper or a white square Zentangle tile, and a tortillon or something to blend the pencil with. So let's start. With your paper or your tile and a pencil, let's draw 4 corner dots. And let's draw those dots a little further away from the edge of the tile so we get a thicker border, giving us a smaller area to work with. Now connect those dots with your pencil, creating a square on the tile, a not very perfect square. Next, we'll draw our string, which is going to be a bell curve or a U shape or upside down U shape. And I suggest making this line really light. So we're going to start the bell curve from the lower left corner dot of the tile and end it at the lower right corner dot. We're going to let the string flare out a little bit from that left corner and then let it curve up towards the top of the tile, going maybe beyond the inner border you created, and bring it right back down to the right corner. Next, we're going to draw orbs along the string. So pick up your pen and let's start drawing. Draw a string of pearls that are not too big or not too small, but maybe a little bit smaller than the pen cap. And if you don't want to have the string line showing, you can also place your orbs along the edge of that line, or later you can use an eraser. So we're going to surround this string of orbs with smaller orbs, so keep that in mind. The orbs can be uniform in size or not. They can even get smaller or bigger as they reach the top of the bell curve. So once that string of pearls is finished, let's draw another layer of orbs. Place this next layer of orbs in the interstices, the areas between the orbs we just laid down. And these orbs are just a little bit smaller than the orbs you added for that string of pearls. So now you're adding smaller pearls in the interstices of the original pearl string. And take your time doing that. You can hit pause and come back. Okay, now again, we're going to add yet another layer of orbs that are even smaller than the ones that we just put down. And these can be randomly placed along that string of pearls. You don't have to be neat about it, and they can just land wherever they go. And once that's done, we're going to fill in the top part of the curve, about the first quarter of the top of that bell curve. We're going to fill that with orbs. And one way to go about it is to draw a mesh of orbs, so a cluster of different sized orbs. Start out by drawing a large orb somewhere in that top quarter of the bell curve, and then maybe add a second large orb elsewhere. And then surround those orbs with smaller orbs that are just a little bit smaller. And then make another round around those orbs by adding even smaller orbs, little tiny orbs going around and filling up whatever space you have left in that top part of the bell curve. Now, once you've filled up your space at the top there with some orbs, a mesh of orbs, let's draw a line that outlines or auras all of these orbs. So on the inside of our bell curve, draw a line that goes around your series of orbs and draw it all the way around from the left to the right or from the right to the left, whichever way you're working. And then draw another aura line These lines can vary and they don't have to be perfect replicas of each other. And maybe draw another aura line. So you might have about 3 aura lines down. Now let's work on the outside part of this bell curve. On the outside part, you probably have a bunch of orbs, maybe little tiny orbs, and maybe you still have a little bit of space left in the corners, in the upper corners. Let's fill these corners with diva dance. Start by drawing a line that auras your orbs there. So pick a corner, a left corner, the right corner, and aura your orbs. And it's probably going to be a little squiggly because you're auraing all of those little orbs. And then add some black along that line, either filling the dips in the line or creating a bump and filling it in with black. And then aura that. And then fill in the dips or maybe add some more bumps and aura again. And you can keep going and just randomly add bits of black on the line that you just drew until the corner is full. And that's diva dance. Now let's do the same thing on the other side. Draw an aura line and then add some little bumps or fill in any crevice. And mine are looking like ladybug dots. And then aura that line. Maybe add some more fill of black. And you can just fill in the dips that you have, or you can create a little mountain on your line. And then you aura that line. Or maybe the next line doesn't have any black bits or little bumps. That's fine too. So keep going with diva dance until this corner is finished. And that should be the end of the drawing part. Now we can get into shading. But before we finish shading, let's outline that inner border that we created. And of course, if you have any areas that you've drawn that went over that border, then just remember to draw under it in volleyball fashion. Okay, now that the border is down, I'm looking at the tile, and what I see here is, and maybe yours is different, but this tile reminds me of a jetty or a beach. And the center part is kind of like the waves coming into a cove or something and rippling on the stones. If you want to add some color here, now would be the time to do it, if you'd like to do that. Otherwise, we're going to pick up the pencil and start adding some graphite. Add a little bit of shading in the edges of what I'm calling the water. This is the inside of the bell curve. Add some shading on the inside of this empty space that was created. Or maybe you don't have empty space, but that last aura line on the inside of the bell curve, I'm adding some shading there and I'm pulling that towards the center. And then add shading along the edge of the string of pearls. You can add some graphite around those and then shade over any of the other orbs, those smaller orbs. And you can also shade on both sides of the pearl string all the way around, bringing that shade outwards away from the string of pearls. And then add some graphite on the left and right sides under the tipple, pulling the graphite out over that diva dance. And this kind of lifts that string of orbs up off the paper. And then finally, you can add a little bit of shade along the entire border. Add just a little bit of graphite and make sure to go under any areas that went over the border. Blend the graphite along the borderline, and that should be it. Take a moment to check out your tile and see if you want to add any kind of embellishments or maybe some color. You can still add some here. Or maybe you want to add a little bit of a border, a more of a fancy border. Maybe you can add a second line, an aura line around that border. Or just leave the tile as it is and simply add your chop. And that's it for episode 7. Thanks for drawing with me, and I'm really looking forward to see what you come up with.